Hi, my name is Jason C. Jackson. This is a project for studies in interpersonal communication, HSCO 508 with Liberty University. Slide. By way of introduction, again, my name is Jason C. Jackson. I live in Lexington, North Carolina with my wife, Colleen, and my daughter, Romy. I'm currently pursuing a master's in human services counseling. My hobbies are hiking, kayaking, outdoor activities, and playing guitar also. My heart's desire is to help others, and I'm hoping that this degree will help me to learn how to utilize my talents to be in better service to others. Slide. My overarching goal for my life. If you can see here on this particular slide, we have what makes up our world, the different segments of faith, health, learning, and fun, and all those things. And then there's a large amount of that chaos in there. So that's a large part of our lives as well, especially with another kid on the way. So, next slide. The overarching goal for my life is to eliminate barriers of interpersonal communication to be more effective in service to others. So that's the overarching goal for my life, or the OAG. Okay, going on to the next slide. This has to do with my background and behavioral blend. I'm a high S with a CIS blend of personality. And this would involve in saying that I believe that people are more important than the task. So I try to keep things people-oriented, and I definitely found that to be true when I was reading through the Carbonell text. I can be both outgoing and reserved, or active and passive. So there's kind of a dichotomy there with my personality type. People may at times perceive my quiet nature as a lack of concern, and this can be a negative, and I may need to improve this aspect of my personality. Also, I have a calm demeanor that may help people feel at ease at times, and this can be a positive as well. Okay, so going on to the next slide. Background and behavioral blend. Carbonell states that with my behavioral blend, I can be the life of the party or the quiet spectator. So it can go either way, just depending. It's important for me to know when to exhibit these different sides of my personality to enlarge my conversation. I'm usually inclined to avoid conflict in most cases, and this can be a positive and a negative influence for me and others. Conflict can be useful in creating changes for the better, and it also can be negative in creating hurtful messages, which Stewart tells us we want to try to avoid. The key for me, though, however, will be to discern when disagreements are necessary and not allow them to become conflicts. Okay, going on to the next slide. The 6 features of communication. Stewart gives us a definition here that communication is the continuous, complex, collaborative process of verbal and nonverbal meaning making. That we are trying to exchange meaning with one another. To enlarge our conversation, we must become skilled at techniques and practices of good communication, and that's hopefully what this class will help us do. The 6 features here are meaning, choice, culture, identities, conversation, and nexting. These are all things that we want to be aware of. Going on to the next slide. And so a definition of enlarging the conversation, definitely for me, would be to enlarge my conversation. I must try to see the world through the eyes of another and understand how they think and feel about the world around them. Understanding how they think and feel in their cultural context will help me enlarge my conversation and my knowledge of the world around me. So next slide. How can I enlarge my conversation? What are other ways, other things that I may be able to do? I can enlarge the conversation by taking care to express meaning in a way that is clear and respectful to others always. I will be mindful of the choices I make while I'm engaged in conversation with the good of others in mind. I think that's important as well. I will also be aware of the differences in communication among the various cultures and people groups, learning and adjusting to different cultures and mores. I think those are all important things to use. Next slide would be enlarging conversation again. I will be concerned with identities of others, being careful not to threaten someone's identity in the course of conversations, to always be uplifting and supportive. I will be aware of the importance inherent in every conversation that I engage in, Everyone you talk to has importance, and we want to make them feel that importance when we're talking with them about various things in life. I'll implement the skill of nexting, being aware of the most helpful thing I can say or do to improve communication and interpersonal action. So what's that next thing I can do to make that positive experience for me and for the other person as well? So the next slide will be about potential barriers to effective communication. These are things that we all need to think about, and for me, I think a few of those are looking back at the Stewart text. It teaches us that there's a direct link between the quality of communication and the quality of your life. Very important to remember. I think that is an excellent quote. Identifying the barriers and removing them will help me chart the course towards better interpersonal exchanges. So going on to the next slide. For me, one of those first things that I would like to do is choosing not to engage in verbal aggression. Stewart states verbal aggression can be perceived as an attack on the self-concept of another. And when we do that, we almost always create problems for ourselves and others. So the second point would be to beware of conversations that spiral out of control and change the focus to questioning someone's character or self-worth. Change it back to actually what you were discussing to begin with. So I think that's very important. Third point I like to look at, Stewart tells us to shift the focus away from the character of a person to the original subject of the conflict or discussion. As I was just saying, that last point, we want to get the discussion back to the subject and away from the person. So the next slide will be about improving on nonverbal communication. Nonverbals are very important. Burley Allen tells us that only 35% of communication comes from words. So everything else is nonverbal. In order to obtain the most reliable information about the affective states, intentions, and attitudes of a communication partner, these signals are integrated into a single percept. So that's something, a good quote to remember also. So going on to the next slide. It's also important not to use emotionally charged words. Deciding not to use those red flagged words that usually create problems. This is the first step. Being aware of how others perceive certain words. So a red flag for you may not be a red flag for them. They may perceive certain words in a certain way, and understanding that about them, and even has to do with different cultures, is very important. I think this Bible verse is very important as we seek to be aware of what we say and what we do. So, wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. So if you're a religious person, non-religious person, I think this verse is definitely something that everyone can use. So that's James 1:19 in the King James Version. Going on to the next slide. There's also a discussion on noise pollution, internal noise pollution, and how this affects enlarging our conversation and being engaged with people as we go about our day. It's important to eliminate the internal chatter that we are usually engaged in so that I can listen to what others are truly saying. Okay? I can achieve this by learning to focus and practicing concentration techniques for effective listening. Burley Allen states that we often prejudge information as unimportant, too boring, or too complex. And when we prejudge that, we'll almost always miss some nugget of wisdom that someone has to say because we've judged that too quickly. So it's important not to do that. I can remind myself that everything that someone says has meaning and worth, and that listening and caring will show someone else that they matter to you. That's very important to remember. Going on to the next slide. We're talking about noise pollution again, but this time it's external noise pollution. I think one of the main things in today's society as it has to do with noise pollution is the excessive use of technology and how this can be a barrier to meaningful communication and positive interpersonal interactions. Myself, one thing I would like to try to implement is using technology more sparingly, knowing that the needs of someone else are more important than whatever those things that we may be doing, like minimal use of cell phones, computer, knowing when proper time is for those things. And this will likely probably lead to more conversations and better interpersonal interactions. If someone is visibly upset while you're conversing with them, it's important to deal with this distraction by using empathic listening and putting yourself in their shoes. Kind of knowing where they're coming from and how they feel about a certain thing will go a long way. So for me, I would like to seek to understand their viewpoint and use nexting to make wise decisions about the next thing that I would say or do when interacting with people. So going on to the next slide. So my action plan and conclusion, to sum up everything here, I would say a few of the important keys here would be, I'll be reminded that good communication is important in family and in business and every aspect of life. Also, listening is a cornerstone of good communication and building quality relationships. Listening is very important. I will be aware that much of communication involves nonverbal cues. That's a very important thing also. Nonverbal communication can often convey more of our meaning than words can. Also, nonverbal communication that may lead to cultural misunderstandings, not forgetting that verbal communications are subject to similar misinterpretations. And so just keeping the cultural differences in mind as we interact with others. Okay, going on to the next slide. The action plan and the conclusion here, I will be mindful of my personality and behavioral blend and try to be passionate about supporting and inspiring others in the ways that I am able to do so. I will employ empathic listening to improve my understanding of others' perspectives and to enlarge my conversation in doing so. The third point is my passion is serving others, as it says in Uniquely You, while digging deeper into life's perplexing problems. So this is something I want to continue to serve others and to seek out the deeper meanings of life. So, and finally, probably the main thing that I would like to do going forward in life is to love God and love my neighbor with passion and consistency. And I think in doing so that good things will happen for me and good things will happen for those that I interact with. And hopefully I can use a lot of the things that I've learned in the course to be better at serving others, which was my overarching goal. Thank you.